the others?
Yeah, so I think that's definitely going to be a key way of looking at it over these next few months. The way that this pandemic has unfortunately unfolded has been this gradual spread throughout the globe. But it did notably start in China and had the first few cases outside of China in the Asia region. So when we're looking at areas that maybe we're hoping that as China appears to be coming out on the other side of this sort of recovery after going through its own sort of version of the pandemic, that will sort of create staggered timelines throughout the globe. And so areas like Latin America and emerging Europe are only just starting to encounter the pandemic in their regions and deal with that domestically, whereas China and the rest of Asia is now, their data prints I think are going to be especially important over the next few weeks as we get a better sense of how that recovery is evolving and how quickly that can really come through. So there's a chance for a relative value story there for sure, particularly on the regional side.
Yeah, that would suggest steering clear of Latin America for now, since they have yet to see really the pandemic take hold in their area. So one thing that you say might help the Latin American markets, particularly Mexico, is if there is some kind of agreement among the OPEC nations, the allies, and other oil-producing nations come Monday. How much would that help something like Mexico?
Sure. So it would certainly be a help for a lot of these commodity-producing emerging market countries. Particularly, this oil issue has come at a really inopportune time, given that it coincided with the start of the virus. So any sort of deal that can be reached between OPEC Plus and its members at the meeting that's now been scheduled for next Monday would certainly be helpful in terms of addressing the supply side issue that we're currently seeing in oil markets. Unfortunately, however, there's still a lingering demand side issue, which is just that there isn't a lot of global demand, particularly because of this slowdown in growth that we've seen globally. So while it will provide some relief, and that's the hope, we haven't seen a massive reaction in a lot of those emerging market currencies, Mexican peso, Russian ruble, and Colombian peso over these last few weeks that you would have expected to rally more on oil prices.
All right, good stuff. Emily Weiss, State Street Emerging Market Strategist. Really appreciate your taking the time to break it all down for us. Really appreciate it. Now let's turn to Mark Crumpton and our first word headlines. Mark?
Scarlett, the World Health Organization is warning countries not to ease lockdowns too soon. The WHO says lifting restrictions too quickly could lead to a resurgence of the disease, and the economic impact could be even more severe and prolonged. Global health officials also conceded slightly on guidelines for wearing masks, saying there has been a healthy debate on the matter. There are new estimates today on the financial toll of the coronavirus pandemic. The Asian Development Bank predicts the crisis will cost the global economy as much as $4.1 trillion. That's nearly 5% of all economic activity. Japan's bracing for what officials fear will be an explosive surge in coronavirus cases. Confirmed cases in Japan have more than doubled in a week to almost 700. Prime Minister Shinzo Abe has come under increasing pressure to declare a state of emergency to contain the disease's spread. Abe told Parliament today the situation didn't yet warrant an emergency declaration, but said he wouldn't hesitate to do so when the time comes. The British people will hear from Queen Elizabeth this weekend. Buckingham Palace says the 93-year-old Queen has recorded a rare address to the public about the coronavirus pandemic. It will be broadcast on Sunday. Apart from her annual Christmas Day message, the Queen has made only a handful of special broadcasts during her 68-year reign. She addressed the nation during the 1991 Gulf War and after the death of Princess Diana in 1997. Global news 24 hours a day, on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in over 120 countries. In New York, I'm Mark Crumpton. This is Bloomberg.
Even in a circumstance where you're down 80% of the rest of the year, we're still going to have $4 billion of cash. We're going to have access to a $2 billion revolver. We think it's highly unlikely, but we are planning for the worst case.
Enemy dropping into the AO.
The president has been in touch on the phone with MBS in Saudi Arabia and Putin in Russia. He's been on the phone several times. Other people in the administration have been talking to their counterparts in both of those countries. So we do that independently in America's interest. We don't have to go to the OPEC meeting.
You're done warming up. Stand by for deployment to the war zone. Plunder. The job's simple. Secure more cash than the enemy. Mark a drop point for your team. You'll lead them in.
Yes, I need.
Objective updated. Secure that position. Contract complete. Recon intel secured.
Does anyone need this?
Personal radar in the air. Primary LZs are marked. Extract is standing by. Supply box marked. Secure the package. Next objective located.
Come, I can fly.
Contract updated. New objective identified.
Come, I can fly.
I'll drive. Need this.
Contract complete. All supply boxes located.
Hostiles in the area.
Enemy personal radar in the air.
Does anyone need this?
Yes, I need it.
Proceed to the marked location and secure the area.
Visual on the device.
Enemy attack chopper is in the AO. Bring it down and recover the cash. Enemy personal radar in the air.
I'll drive.
Enemy personal radar in the air. Radar in the air. Contract complete. Recon intel secured. Enemy personal radar in the air.
Does anyone need this?
Yes, I need it.
Move to the next area and secure the perimeter.
I'll drive.
Contract complete. Recon intel secured. Move to the next area and secure the perimeter.
I'll drive. Vendor here if you need equipment.
Locate Primary objective accomplished. Recon intel secured. Check your gear and weapons. Planes are making ready for deployment. Enemy soldier incoming. Hostile dropping into the area. Watch the skies. Warm-up's done. Time to kick this off. Hostile dropping into the area. Plunder. The job's simple. Secure more cash than the enemy. Alright, soldier. Mark a drop point for your team. Hostile dropping into the area. Watch the skies.
I think that's here.
Should definitely be big
God, I think that's here.
on the way down. You don't have to leverage everything in right now, but what has the market taken its lead from as of late? It's been oil, and I think that's what disrupted the overall flow today. I think it could have been much worse today if not
Does anyone
for
need
that
this?
oil meeting that took place in the White House. Oil's up 50%. That takes a lot of these small cap names up with it. But oil is such an insignificant part of the overall indice that I don't think that's going to be the saving grace. So ultimately lower, but you're going to get these little rallies in this bear market that we're in currently.
As all four of you have said, the biggest bounces come during bear markets. That's when you get these violent snap back up here. Guys, let's get a little micro now if we can. We just went macro. Let's get micro. We got the 3 T's, we'll call that, right? And they're not tonic, although that will be used later on, I'm sure, by many people out there. Guy, let's start with you. Your old shop, Goldman Sachs, upgrading Twitter, saying this is going to be a long-term winner, in part because everybody's just stuck on the site watching all the updates.
Supply box location. Move to secure.
It should be. And listen, I got to tell you, the last couple of quarters, have not been terrible. Obviously, the stock has been pretty much of a bust over the last 3.5, 4 months with pretty much everything else. But the concern I have now, it really comes down to ad spend. I can't say with what the ad spend's going to look like. So although we might have a ton of eyeballs there, and you're going back to a 2000 term, unless they're getting the ad dollars to back it up, I'm not certain that's a great thing. With that said, I agree with the note. I mean, Twitter seems to be the one beneficiary of this if we can all come out the other side. So Twitter at current levels, if you want to play stock market a little bit, is a name you can start to pick away at for sure.
Objectives update. Move to the next location.
Dan Nathan, I mean, that's the amazing thing about Twitter. It's like you got all these people that are on it, everybody's watching it all day long, but yet it just seems hard for them to figure out how to make money.
No doubt about it. Sully, I'm of two minds when it comes to Twitter. It's obviously become a very, very valuable utility to all different types of businesses on that platform. But the fact of the matter is, it's a company that, and even in good times, was not growing sales at the sort of clip that you might expect for a growth company valued this way. I will tell you this. There is room. The stock would be amazingly cheap. Right now, it has a $15 billion enterprise value. 3/4 of their market cap is in cash. They've got a $38 billion balance sheet. And if it's down there, if there's a strategic that does not buy it, and something like that, or a big meeting, then I will launch a business, and I will go activist, and I will buy it there, okay? Because this is an asset that actually needs to be paired with some other social assets or be part of a much larger platform, because they're just not doing it on their own to the sort of scale that would validate it ever becoming one of these mega platforms like we've seen Facebook go to become this massive behemoth.
Yeah, that's a great point there. All right, let's switch gears to another T, and that is actually just the single letter T, the stock ticker. Tim Seymour, a scathing note by MoffettNathanson, $23 target, the low on the street. They said, you think about them just being a cell phone company. Moffett says, no, they're very cyclical. And the one thing that I think the investors on the equity side need to worry about is the CDS spreads. The insurance on the debt are starting to blow out a bit.
Look, a tip of the hat to MoffettNathanson, who put a $30 target on the stock when it was 23% higher. Talking about the dividend coverage ratio, some concerns about the debt, that they needed to actually de-lever before you got to a recession. They needed to do some other things. They pointed out in their note today is that this is a company that wanted to get more cyclical, and they say, congratulations, you've done that going into a recession.
Property concerned
about your debt, and
mostly
concerned about the dividend and looking at dividend coverage ratios, which is essentially free cash flow and the dividend payment. And if you think about people that are investing right now in AT&T because it's paying a 7% dividend, this should be potentially concerning news. They give base, moderate, and severe recession cases, or mild, moderate, and severe, and they do their analysis very well, by the way. And I think that's the question. Look, AT&T 40% is still wireless. Their entertainment business is 25%. I'm long the stock. I do think that their cost of financing, though, has gone down dramatically as well. I mean, that's one thing that I didn't see really emphasized in this note, but good for these guys, and the street listens to them. And in fact, I think the stock was listening to them today.
All right, Steve Grasso, let's talk about Tesla. It's a good news, bad news story for Tesla. The good news is the deliveries coming in the first quarter. We got the numbers yesterday. Look pretty good. The stock up today about 6%. The bad news is the stock's at 480.
Need a driver.
It was at 944 basically a month and a half ago. How do you read Tesla?
So Tesla's all about positioning. So obviously, to your point, it's been beaten down.
But let's remember, they beat a low bar. They didn't give any guidance, and these are quarter numbers. They're not month numbers. And what always happens with Tesla is the bulls get a little overzealous, the shorts get a little fearful, the stock always comes out a little bit in the wash. I'd be a seller of Tesla because I think going forward, you're going to be disappointed with these. It's any place to hide in a market is volatile.
The history books write the story on this bear market. To me, listen, they shored up their balance sheet, good for them. But to your point, Sully, this company was always a recession away from having, their product be something that, is just not particularly affordable for most people around this world. So the fact that they came in at 10,000 or
next objective located,
$76,000 number, and that's about it. That's as good as it gets for 2020 for these guys. So I just don't know why this stock is levitating where it is. It should be lower, in my opinion.
All right, Dan Nathan, Steve Grasso, Guy Adami, Tim Seymour, you guys, Total Pro's been rolling with all kinds of changes this week. White House press conferences. We love you for it. Thank you very much. Best to you all and your families. Be safe. We'll see you guys on the other side of the weekend. Take care. All right, coming up after the break, we're going to focus more on the small business side of the story from two important angles. A real-world company, 125-year-old company, family-owned, just trying to survive. Can they get an SBA loan? We're going to hear from and speak with the number one maker of loans, CEO of Money for Bank, will join us. It is a small business story. Two sides. We got to hear it. We're back with more CBC's Fast Money Money.
Contract complete. All supply boxes located.
Care package here. Cash inside.
there in the heart of, Virginia, West Virginia, Kentucky, Ohio, the heartbeat of America as far as I'm concerned. What are you seeing? Are we going to be able to get these rescue loans processed for the government? Because a lot of small businesses seem very
Proceed
frustrated.
to the marked location and secure the area.
Absolutely get these loans processed. We're from now through June 30th. Absolutely, as much as we can to help survive and get through this crisis and better days ahead.
Yeah, and where do we stand in the process? Do you feel like, Steve, your bank and you and your team has gotten enough guidance from Treasury and the federal government to make this work efficiently?
We have received very substantial guidance from Treasury and SBA as of last night, and we are prepared and certainly positioned to execute against that. There are a couple of areas where there are questions, but I would say 95, 98% of what we will see by way of applications, we can process, and we'll do that very efficiently. Increasingly, we'll be able to scale this business and further automate as we go forward. So we're expecting to be in a position to start
primary objective
next week
recon
and take care of customers who are applying tonight and throughout the weekend.
I'll drive.
Now, are these, I don't know if you'd know this, Steve, I'm going to put you on the spot a bit. Are these mostly Huntington customers already, or are these new people
Does anyone
that
need
are
this?
coming
Get
in?
back here. Dash inside.
And at the moment, most of our application flow is from existing customers
Here if you need
who
equipment.
have a Know Your Customer requirement. Bank Secrecy Act, FNI, Laundering Act, that we are required to make sure we have knowledge of who we're doing business with. And so that favors existing customers for us and all the other banks. So we'll take applications from non-customers. What we're encouraging them to do is to apply directly to their bank where they have a primary relationship because they've already cleared these Know Your Customer requirements. Respectively, those banks are in a position to process the application just as we are with our customer base.
That is really interesting, and I think it answers the question for next interview as well. But Steve Stein, I will let you guys get back to work here. I know you're going to try and work all night. Small business, appreciate it, Steve. Come back soon to us.
Thank you for your coverage.
Of course, definitely. Small business is the business of the United States. And let's talk about one right now that's very close to us in the CBC family. It's operated by the brother and father of my colleague, Boston. It's a 125-year-old family-owned seafood wholesaler, literally on their 5th generation right now, working behind the registers. And let's bring in now Anthony Mantia, the company, John Mantia and Sons, he's the general manager. Anthony, it's a pleasure to have you on CNBC again. I wish you were under better circumstances. I heard the interview there with Tino. You are attempting to get some help through some of these programs. What has your personal, real-world experience been so far?
Well, it's been a trying week. We have two banks at the moment who are both telling us that they just won't take our application today. As I said, we don't want to disappoint our employees. We certainly don't want to be out of a job. We want to keep working, but this loan is just not coming through today.
And you guys have tried to keep people on, 13 to 15 employees. You've taken pay cuts. You're trying to keep everybody employed, and we commend you for that. You heard what Steve Steinhauer said, though. Basically, you almost need to go back to your bank or banks, that going to random banks is not going to work. I assume you've gone to your primary bank or banks. What did they say?
Does anyone need this?
Secure all cash supply.
For 125 years, the American dream
no idea what to expect down the road here. Trying to keep our employees and keep everybody going. We're trying to do our part to keep the economy up and running.
Objective updated. Secure
Anthony,
that
do us a
position.
favor. Keep us here at CNBC aware of how you guys are doing, how the process is working, when it comes through, and we hope that it does for you. Let us know as well. We want to stay on this small business story. Best to you and your family, of course. We'll see you soon. Thank you, Anthony.
You too.
All right, coming up, we haven't forgotten about the stock market mission as well. And so what executives are taking advantage of lower prices to buy their own stock? Coming up, we've done every 2 weeks. Company with executives are buying their own stock to us. A special message from me to two very special people. In my life, for obvious reasons, I can't be after that.
In the second quarter, the U.S. economy remains fairly weak and has a hard time getting out of this until 2021. Coming out of the Great Recession, it took 3.5 years. So this is faster than that, and that's because we're doing it much bigger. We have to. This is almost like a meteorite hitting the Earth and knocking it off its orbit, and we got to get back to our own orbit again. It's global in scope.
It's 11 a.m. on Wall Street, and Squawk Alley is live.
Carl Quintanilla, Morgan Brennan, John Ford, Squawk Alley on
Recon intel
CNBC.
secured. Solid work.
Good morning, everybody.
Squawk Box covering the 3 R's on the latest readiness, relief, and record-setting results impacting your family and your money. Squawk Box on CNBC. Watch or listen live on the CNBC app.
Supply box located. Move secure.
This seat's mine. This seat's mine.
Stock was bought. Follows another big insider buy back in late February.
All right, passenger.
Insider buy since 2012. GM. Interesting here. An executive sold in September, bought back last week. So a big reversal at GM.
I'll drive.
Nike, big buyer. John Rogers, Imperial Investments. He's on the board. He was a buyer. Baxter International. 800,000 on the stock bought. First buy in 3.5 years. And by the way, MGM Resorts actually $25 million. They're the biggest. Not on here though because CEO change and the hedge fund sponsor still. Got to give him a shout out. All that data coming from InsiderScore.com. Speaking of shout outs, normally don't get personal, but tomorrow is the 50th anniversary, wedding anniversary of my parents down there in Virginia. Of course, Mom and Dad, if you're watching, I love you very much. Thanks for having me, by the way. And you know we'd love to be with you, all of us here, but we can't. So happy anniversary. Love you guys. I'm going to go to break before I start crying on live national television. I'll be back with Options Action right after this.
This was an ad.
It was
Okay. This was a for children to learn words.
No.
If I could just get a hand vote on a universal digital tax, I wouldn't say there was a majority in the room for one way or the other.
Do it properly within the multilateral context.
It is a proportionate tax. It will fall away once there is an international solution.
If people want to just arbitrarily put taxes on our digital companies, we'll consider arbitrarily putting taxes on car companies.
It's like a Damocles sword hanging over Europe.
We can do what we can to avoid tariffs.
Are you concerned about the threat of a trade fight? Every customer we have is focused on that.
You're a European company that could be collateral damage in a trade war.
They're not getting paid for being
frustrated. The US government has been very decisive.
I was very optimistic about the signals I was getting from the meeting between Trump and Ursula von der Leyen.
This is the time for a global agreement and not for global dispute.
Europe is a tough negotiator. Retaliation measures are part of a toolkit. If we don't get something, I'm going to have to take action. They're going to make a deal because they have to.
In 2019, Procter & Gamble spent $11.1 billion on advertising, marketing and promotions, making it the world's biggest spender. But whilst the grand total went up, advertising spend went down. So what's going on at P&G? Welcome to Marketing Media Money. The Chief Brand Officer
You know, we'd love to be with you, all of us here, but we can't. So happy anniversary. Love you guys. I'm going to go to break before I start crying on live national television. I'll be back with Options Action right after this.
Check your gear and weapons. Planes are making ready for
CNBC
deployment.
program is sponsored by IBM. What's smart to work?
No one likes to feel stuck.
Enemy soldier incoming.
Especially by something like your cloud. It's a problem, but the IBM cloud is different. It's the most open and secure public cloud for business. It can manage all your things and data anywhere, so it can help take on the to restocking shelves on demand. Getting in your way.
Playtime's over, mate. You're going to the war zone. Simple. Secure more cash than the enemy. Alright, soldier. Mark a drop point for your team. Enemy dropping into the AO.
Options action. Strategies from traders. CNBC. Sponsored by Bakersfield by TD Ameritrade.
Hi, I'm Happy. I created Gavi because most people overpay. Gavi is a free tool that saves you money by finding the best deal. Gavi users save more than $800 per year on average. Go to Gavi.com and stop overpaying for cards.
Are those your bank fees?
Overdraft. That's a maintenance fee, which I don't know what they maintain.
You should start banking with Chime. There are no hidden fees, and I get paid up to 2 days early with direct deposit. It's super easy. Start banking with Chime today at chime.com.
For every staircase supporting a grand entrance, door frames marking milestones, floors kissed by bare feet, protect the pure joy of home.
Proceed to the marked location and secure the area.
Termites out of your home with our all-new On-Guard termite protection system. Always backed by the Terminix promise to keep your home strong enough for all the love it holds.
Enemy dropping into the AO.
And welcome everybody to another special edition of Options Action. I am a slightly less weepy Brian Sullivan. Thanks for sticking with us. Hope you're having as good of a Friday like us, staying at home. All right, another wild week certainly in the markets. We started off promising Ended, though, the week without falling again to 60 points. All in all, not that bad considering the employment numbers we got yesterday and the monthly payroll. The virus, pandemic, and its impact on everybody watching CNBC's Mind, and that is why we're here, and we've got a great lineup for you. Mike Coe, Tony Zhang, and Carter Worth. But before we get started, let's talk about something that everybody wants to hear about. Some kind of treatment or vaccine.
Does anyone need this?
For COVID-19. Biotech companies scrambling everywhere to come up with something. Let's get the very latest on where we stand. For that, who else? Well, thanks, Jordan. Thank you.
The number of biotech companies working on this problem grows by the day. Let's give you an update on the timelines for a vaccine. We got an update from Moderna's chairman yesterday. That, of course, is the lead program with the candidate vaccine already in human testing. He told us yesterday, if all goes well, they could be aiming to start phase 2 trials by spring or early summer. So we're talking May or June there. J&J also gave us an update on its vaccine program this week, saying it aims to start phase 1
location and secure the area.
And if things go well there, it could even have something ready, potentially for deployment in early 2021. Now, these are record-breaking timelines, Brian. Pfizer is working with the biotech company called BioNTech on a vaccine. Sanofi also in the race, many others as well. Now, let's talk about drugs, because those are going to be available sooner. Companies are working to repurpose existing drugs to potentially treat the novel coronavirus. And we're going to get some data this month from Gilead and Regeneron. Gilead, of course, on its antiviral drug remdesivir, and Regeneron on the rheumatoid arthritis drug called Kevzara that it's been testing in the severe patients with that inflammatory lung response that happens in those severe cases. We've also heard Roche is starting trials
Enemy
with
personal radar in the air.
with its drug, and Incyte and Novartis just announced yesterday they're going to be testing all of these companies using antibody approaches, and Regeneron has put a timeline of hopefully starting human clinical trials with a brand new drug it's creating by early summer, Brian. But really, the nearest term data points to look for are going to be in just a few weeks from Gilead and Regeneron on those trials we told you about.
A lot of hope there. We know you'll be all over it, but we just want the results to be good. Everybody needs that. Meg Terrell, you have a great weekend. To you and your family. All the best.
Enemy soldier incoming.
Okay, Meg. All right, we've got some breaking news right now on banks. I believe it is with Wilfred Frost. Wilf, what do you got for us?
So earlier around 2 p.m. we came up with some data from Bank of America.
Recon intel secured. Solid work.
The size of the applications for the Paycheck Protection Program, Small Business Loan Program.
Primary outlet on mark. Extract standing by.
Does anyone need this?
Of them have requested 22 billion. Again, just one bank. Now, maybe all of the one would expect quite a few.
Objective updated. Secure that position.
I mean, Wilf, listen, I don't want to assume anything, but just the math that you laid out, okay, it is conceivable, not impossible, that $350 million number based on the percentages
of the 2 million clients require as much as the first 85,000 have. So, I mean, if we're kind of guessing there, Brian, but yes, this is an astonishing amount for a single day. And given that there are 5,000 FDIC insured banks across America, that 350 million figure sounds like it won't be big enough, one would assume these
enemy UAV overhead
will get met in due course. But just a huge number to put out there: $22 billion of requests, 85,000 individual requests in total for just one bank in one day.
Truly stunning numbers. And like what Secretary Mnuchin said, if they have to go back to Congress and ask for more, they might.
Speaker Pelosi said that they would do that as well. So both sides of the aisle willing to increase that.
They agree on something. Amazing. Wilford Falls. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. All right, now let's go back to options action. All right, Mike, go. You heard Meg talk about some of these companies. What's on to try to get some kind of vaccine. If an options trading one of these, what do you got?
Enemy UAV overhead. Enemy soldier incoming.
Interesting situation. Talking about the ones that everybody realizes are probably the ones that are sort of leading the pack, if you will, on developing a vaccine.
Enemy dropping into the AO.
A lot of these stocks, unsurprisingly, are some of the better performing stocks that we've seen.
Under fire!
Hit stocks. I'm going to use 2019, the all-time benchmark turning point for the market to.
Shares, it was enough to take them from above 10% to just below 10%. And it does raise probably more questions than it answers on any of these things. Delta and enough about Southwest threshold. You're seeing an SEC filing on this is that anytime you own more than 10% of a company, you have to tell us in a couple of days, I think there's a 2-day period, that you have to go ahead and say, we are selling this or we are buying this at this point if you own more than 10%. If you don't own 10%, then you are not obliged to tell anybody anything until that after the quarter closes. So we don't know what.
Move to the next area and secure the perimeter.
And we don't know.
Enemy personal radar in the air.
What I will say is now that we've gotten this, you're not going to know if they sell below them, because once they go below 10%, they don't have to say anything. We did put a call into Berkshire Hathaway. The office has no comment on anything that's coming out on this. But they don't have to report again until another 45 days after the close of the quarter. So I think we probably won't be seeing more SEC filings until about May 15th. Warren Buffett has said that he's not going to be speaking publicly until the Berkshire Hathaway annual meeting. That's not coming up until the beginning of May, a Saturday on the beginning of May. It's the first Saturday in May. I think the date's May 2nd. I'm not really sure. But we're not going to know what he's doing between now and then because he said he's not going to be speaking publicly between now and then. So that raises probably, again, more questions than it answers at this point. But that's what I can tell you right now.
Big news moving the stocks. Becky, I got a lot of questions. secondly, you know, a lot of Warren's businesses are consumer-facing. The total impact it might have on Berkshire Hathaway's business.
First up, let me just tell you, the meeting is going to be a meeting at this point. They had been hoping to keep it open for shareholders, but the writing was on the wall. It became clearer and clearer as all these other
Bend
events
here
got
if you need
canceled and
equipment.
moved out. So they will still be holding the meeting. At this point, my guess is that Warren Buffett and Charlie Munger will be
Recon
there.
intel secured. Solid work.
Will be there. It could be none of them. But a virtual meeting that everybody else can weigh in on, and it's going to be very still be asking questions. At least that's what we've heard at this point. But there's not a clear format about how any of that's going to work its way out. But we will be hearing from the Oracle of Omaha at that annual meeting.
Secure all cash in the area.
There will be live questions asked from shareholders that day, and then hopefully we get more answers from them. In terms of the consumer-facing businesses, you're right. Start thinking about extensions. Okay, they can't have any flights that are really taking off or going on any of these things. You think of all
Bend
of
here if you
the
need
shopping,
equipment.
the retail outlets that they have, those have all been closed down across the board, just about everything. Berkshire's going to be feeling the shutdown just like everybody else is, all the way through to things like the Burlington Northern Santa Fe Railroad, not carrying as much stuff. Maybe they're carrying some things, but probably not the same amount that we've seen at this point. Brian, home right now? Thing about having cameras on us all of the time. This is the first time ever I'm doing this in my pajamas.
That's, you know, that's
I'll
okay.
drive.
I gotta be honest. I'm using that shower right there.
threw on a
There's gonna be
jacket that was
day where I'm
sitting
gonna
here.
turn off the camera and I just
Get back, Jim. Cash inside.
and I don't care. I'm gonna wear jean shorts,
We're all
drink a
gonna style it.
Schlitz,
No,
and have a
literally.
mullet, and it's gonna be.
Get back, Jim. Cash inside. Does anyone need this?
Hey, did you?
Yeah, done.
And the.
Of course.
And.
Oh, yeah.
All in one.
The world's most comfortable chair, the incredible X-Chair, featuring patented dynamic variable lumbar support. X-Chair's adjustable seat depth keeps users small to tall, comfortable and supported. Available in breathable mesh, HDR
Located
foam,
a
or
supply box. Secure that position.
customized comfortable positions for your neck and arms. X-Chair's patented SiFloat Infinite
I'll
recline
drive.
provides the perfect comfort for users of all size. This is not your grandfather's office chair. X-Chair supports your purpose. Find themselves now free same-day shipping. Just go to call or click to order today and receive a 30-day risk-free trial and $100 off.
New York City's strapped. The mayor waited way too long to impose the lockdown. That won't pay him. So I think a nationwide shelter-in-place order
Next objective located.
huge difference in the course of this pandemic. Watch or listen live or to CNBC.
I'll drive.
Contract updated. New objective identified.
I'll drive.
quarter. Fourth quarter of this year will be down 30%. Brian, I'll send it back to you. And a glimpse of what the future holds for the airline as we see it right now.
Yeah, I mean, wow, a double dose of news on the airline. Phil and then Becky before the break. Really, just the news just continues to it's unbelievable, actually. Phil LeBeau, thank you very much. All right, now let's turn back to options action. We've had a lot of breaking news over the last 5 minutes or so, certainly big news here. Let's talk about Nike because obviously sales are down. Retailers everywhere that might sell Nike shoes, they have been forced to close their doors. Mall traffic is pretty much all but non-existent. So let's talk about Nike and maybe the best way to play this stock. Tony Zhang, you have got an options trade on Nike that might help owners of it, I guess, manage through the volatility. What is it, my friend?
Yeah, so I'm looking at fading some of the strong names in this sector. So if we take a look at Nike, this is one of the strongest stocks. It's retraced 50% of the initial sell-off and bounced lower from that $87 resistance level. And its relative strength has continued to fade alongside with consumer discretionary, which is one of the weakest sectors right now. So I expect Nike to trade lower back to that $60 to $70 range. And if we look at some of the consumer data, we've seen the largest two-week decline of consumer sentiment in history, which is in line with most of the economic data we're currently looking at. So if we look at Bank of America credit card data, clothing spending is down 65% year to year. So this is really going to provide strong downside protection on stocks like Nike over the next few weeks. So the trade that I'm looking to do here is not typical in a strong volatility, in a high volatility environment, but because Nike is actually trading at a fairly reasonable implied volatility, I'm going out to May and I'm buying a put debit spread here. I'm looking out to May and buying the $80 puts and spending about $6.50 and selling the May 62.5 puts and collecting about $1.50 against that, paying $5 for that debit. And the break-even price on this particular stock is only $75. So the stock only has to move about $3 lower over the next month and a half in order for this strategy to be profitable.
All right, Tony, thank you very much. Carter Worth, we're going to finally bring in here, buddy. What do you think of Tony's trade? What do you think of Nike, fundamentally or technically?
You know, what's interesting, if you look at the entire consumer discretionary space, there are only two stocks that are up, of course. And if you look at Nike, it has handily outperformed both Puma and Adidas. And I think ultimately it will catch up with those two on the downside. So I'm with Tony all the way here. And he's targeting a level where there's an unfilled gap from just a week or so ago. To the downside, that's the play.
Mike?
Yeah, I mean, the thing that Tony was referencing was the fact that implied volatility on Nike isn't exorbitant. One of the reasons that he was willing to buy premium to put this on. But of course, the reason that he's using a spread is to help mitigate that. That makes sense for not only mitigating the cost of the spread itself, but also because although the stock is maybe stronger than it should have been, all of the points that he was making, I think, are good ones on that. The fact is the stock is still well off of its all-time highs. So when you're using a spread, you're saying, okay, some of the damage has already been done. Here is basically the magnitude of the further damage that I think could happen between now and May expiration. So using a spread, I think, makes sense for both of those reasons.
Okay, looking at Nike. Now let's talk about a pure play retailer. In fact, one that might be a good play and a good defensive play, even in this market environment. The stock has been doing well. Mike Coe, let's stick with you. Let's talk about Dollar General. I guess generally viewed as a recession play. What do you think the trade here might be?
Okay.
Yeah, so, you know, this is an interesting situation, Dollar General, because this is one of the stocks I think that Carter had been discussing and had mentioned that he thought it was probably a defensive type of a play in this situation. And, you know, I'm sort of inclined to agree with that. I think the trade that we should use here is a call spread risk reversal. The call spread risk reversal I was looking at was the June 145, 165, 185 call spread risk reversal. So in the 165, 185 call spread, selling the 145 puts to help finance that. In this instance, it was trading for very close to even. So you would actually collect about 50 cents at the closing prices that I was looking at. What that means is you're going to get participation from 165 to 185, but in the downside, if the stock should trade lower, and I was looking actually very close to the lows that we saw right when the market rolled over and we saw the worst in March, of 145, that's basically where the stock was sort of bottoming out. I think it hit about 140. That's essentially where you would get long the stock. The idea here is you get upside participation, you get a buffer to the downside, and that's basically, I think, one of the things you want to take a look at, where stocks you like